So, following my recent Hellraiser universe series of videos, and with Halloween around the corner, I decided what better time to bring back my retrospective reviews with none other than the movie itself, Hellraiser. I will say from the outset, this is one of my favourite horror movies of all time, for multiple reasons. So I'm looking forward to sharing these with you and getting your take on the movie and why exactly it might be considered one of your favourites too. This is the movie that arguably put Clive Barker on the map, despite his numerous novels that have a cult following. All of those to one side, it can easily be argued that his directorial outing on Hellraiser is what made Clive Barker the renowned name that he now is in blood, gore, horror, and all things sadistic. Hellraiser is of course the movie adaptation of his novel The Hellbound Heart. I say adaptation as it is not a clear cut and paste, which to those die-hard novel fans can be somewhat jarring, but it's important to remember this was entirely Clive's vision. He wrote and directed this project, he essentially had all creative control, and with budgetary limitations to one side, this was his vision. Which is an important thing to note here. Clive was given $1 million to create this film. Hardly a massive budget even for those times, and they managed to produce a fantastic film for that money, which made its production budget back and then some as it grossed over $14 million domestically, solidifying a sequel and a face of horror forever. The original name during production was Bizarre, Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave, which I guess is a very literal name based on the content of the film. Overall, it took just 10 weeks to film Hellraiser, which when all things considered is a great production runtime. So, what is the movie about? Well, essentially it is what its production name was, Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave. The sadists are the beings known as the Cenobites, extra-dimensional explorers of forbidden pleasures. At least that is what they were introduced to us as in the initial movie. Later in the series this was altered somewhat though. We're introduced to them as one of their human captives escaped. Attempting to rebuild himself from a skeletal form, his former lover is tasked with bringing flesh for him to use to reconstitute with. Unfortunately, the means by which he initially summoned these beings, the lament configuration or puzzle box, is found. Discovered by his niece. She opens it, summons the Cenobites, and then begins to bargain with the beings to save herself by claiming one has escaped. The rest I encourage you to watch to discover, as it's a truly great film. The Cenobites are the scene stealers in this film, without a doubt, but the effects of Frank reconstituting himself still, to this day in my eyes, hold up. It's visceral, disgustingly beautiful, and grotesquely eye-opening. The sexual undertones of abuse and incest run through the movie, and when the payoff happens, you genuinely are happy for Kirsty. The Cenobites themselves are incredible. You have the lead Cenobite, later becoming known as Pinhead, played by Doug Bradley. Female Cenobite, formerly known as Deep Throat, played by Grace Kirby. Simon Bamford as the obese Butterball, and Nicholas Vince as Chatterer. Without a doubt, Pinhead is what made this movie what it is. Doug Bradley, in my view, depicted the menacing explorer with such a uniqueness that was so different from horror villains out at that time that you were not only disturbed, but you were transfixed. Doug performed the character with a quiet, confident gravitas, or that's at least how I see it. Not a performance, but almost a blasé, matter-of-fact, this is who I am, and I will show you things you have never seen before. Throughout the series, Pinhead has been given such incredible quotes, but the few times he spoke in Hellraiser, which arguably is not many at all, he steals the show, and those lines will forever go down as all-time classic quotes, such as the incredibly iconic, "Oh, no tears please, it's a waste of good suffering," which about sums up who Pinhead is and his overall ethos. The other Cenobites, though they are quietly there, they are the ensemble that ties everything together. Chatterer with his clicking and chattering teeth, his bizarre oral fixation with his fingers, Butterball, the grotesque glutton, quietly but menacingly observing, and the only other Cenobite to speak, the female. All of them, with their various mutilations and body modifications, are what I'd consider a double down on the horror narrative. Pinhead is the voice, but the visual impact comes from them all together. Overall, this isn't a movie like your Saws and Hostels. Yes, it's body horror, but it's definitely not gratuitous torture porn like the aforementioned movies. They introduced the Cenobites with enough information and presence to captivate and engage the viewer, but not enough to dilute their fear factor, which is the sign of a well-written movie with great and compelling villains, in my view. It wasn't just the acting which established the Cenobites as iconic horror villains, but it's also their overall design. You have ultra fetishized beings of pleasure and pain in full leather and shiny bondage garbs. It was unlike anything that was out at the time, and a truly daring jump from what was known to horror fans, but one that paid off massively. Initially, the film garnered a mixed reception, with the UK predominantly giving it a massive praise, with Time Out London saying it was Barker's dazzling debut that creates such an atmosphere of dread that the astonishing set pieces simply detonate in a chain reaction of cumulative intensity, and that it was a serious, intelligent and disturbing horror film. Unfortunately though, the United States seemed to rate it an awful lot less, with incredibly scathing reviews, with the New York Times claiming Barker had cast singularly uninteresting actors and that the special effects weren't bad, only damp. But perhaps the worst review comes from Roger Ebert, and he stated, rather bizarrely, as dreary a piece of goods as has masqueraded as horror in many a long cold night, this is one of those movies you sit through with mounting dread, as the fear grows inside of you that it will indeed turn out to be a feature length. This is a movie without wit, style or reason, and the true horror is that actors were made to portray and technicians to realise its bankruptcy of imagination. Overall though, despite the mixed reception, the horror film resonated with audiences and sealed itself as one of those cult classics with rewatch value that will likely still hold up and be enjoyed in many years to come. Like I said, it's a movie I absolutely love. I feel the actors did an incredible job. The director, though not perfect, put a fantastic film together, and one that will be enjoyed far longer than any horror movie out in this day and age. It has style, wit, engaging villains, and a compelling story. It's simplistic, not overly convoluted, and it gives you enough information to whet your appetite into wanting to know more. And it is, as I stated, one of my all-time favourite horror movies. But is it one of yours? Can you remember the first time you watched Hellraiser? And if so, what were your first reactions? If you haven't seen Hellraiser, please treat yourself this Halloween. As always though guys, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, so please let me know down below in the comment section, and if you did enjoy this video, then please consider leaving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more reviews in the future. If you think this video is worth it and you want to support me, the channel and what I do, then head on over to my Patreon page, the link is in the description box. I've been Mr. H, and until next time, I'll catch you in the comment section.